Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us here today. Excited to talk about this. Autonomous sourcing tools are a relatively new category, and we've been enhancing the sourcing process for quite a while with technology, but it's really accelerated over the last several years. So this is a very exciting topic for us. I am going to kick it off. I'm going to talk a little bit about technology enhanced sourcing, and then Benushi will talk about the evolving landscape, specifically of autonomous sourcing, and then we'll talk more about navigating the tool selection. And there will be time for Q&A. Please, if you, sorry, there might have been a little bit of in and out on that intro. If you missed the intro, please use the Q&A box on your screen to submit questions, and we will take a look at those as we're going and try to answer them. If not, as we go through at the end, if we run out of time, we'll try to send you an answer after. Also, would like to just remind everyone, you will get these slides and the recording. So there might be a couple slides that feel like there's a lot of words on them. Sometimes we do that for a reference for you. So if you're watching independently or you want to reference them later, you've got that. But happy to have you here, and we hope to have this be an interactive session. So let's jump now into some of the traditional sourcing process and some of the challenges that we've seen. Those of you who've been around in the procurement and sourcing world for a while probably are aware of how time intensive running an RFP can be, between putting the documents together and evaluating proposals and managing all the paperwork, the virtual paperwork. Hopefully you're not doing it on paper anymore, but there was a time where providers would come in, suppliers would walk in, and they would print out all the presentations into notebooks or bound books. And I recall some companies having a negotiation process where you would walk in and out of the room and write your proposal on paper. That was before my time too, luckily. But there has been quite a bit to automate, but still the process of evaluating has made an RFP be multiple months long in many cases, which is just not how business works today. There's also lack of visibility in many cases, even when you have tools that bring the paperwork together or the documents together. Still analyzing trends and tracking information and identifying savings can be difficult. It's very easy to build supplier bias into the process. And although we want to give preference to suppliers that have shown positive success in the past, we also want to make sure that we're looking at alternatives and keeping pricing competitive. And then, of course, it's hard to collaborate with suppliers or with stakeholders internally, and stakeholders are not generally pleased with the long cycle time. They want what they want, and we all need to move quickly. And there's also, the potential, when you have a burdensome process, to rely on suppliers to accelerate the process, to potentially overbuy or potentially scope in a way that may not be the best interest of the buying organization. So all of these tools have grown to fill a need, business need that still exists. And when we look at the variety of solutions that are available, there's really quite a few that can be used to enable sourcing professionals. So on the next slide, we'll look at some of those tools and the evolution, really, or how we've broken them out. This is certainly not exhaustive. There's a couple examples here, but they're not inclusive of everything. E-sourcing tools have been around for the longest, and that's probably what most of us think of when we think of Ariba sourcing or the GEP suite or Oracle's NetSuite or all of the suites that are out there. They tend to be, or at least have in the past been, tools that put a workflow around the RFP process. They put some templates in place to build your documents. They might have ways to pull out individual forms of questions and compare them. So they do some things to streamline and to allow better collaboration. As someone who responds to RFPs in Ariba and other tools, they still feel fairly clunky and aren't necessarily really tailored or expediting the process on the supplier side. On the buyer side, they may help a bit, but there's a lot of opportunity there. I think when we look at the newer tools, if we look at autonomous sourcing tools, Those tend to differ a little bit from e-sourcing tools. They tend to operate independently within the framework, within the ecosystem. They use more sophisticated algorithms and AI, and they autonomously execute some of those sourcing activities. You can cut out some of that work and some of that time. And they can also make it a little bit more aligned to the needs and the natural flow. There's also sourcing optimization tools, which we consider a different subcategory here. And those are typically used to enhance e-sourcing tools by adding more efficient feature or advanced features. So optimizing supply offers, optimizing awards scenarios. We see Keelvar and Jagger having some examples of that. There's a lot of other providers for all of these, but just wanted to give you a rough idea of the subcategories that we see here. I think it's also important to talk about the subcategories of the diverse solutions and the different sourcing activities that they handle on the next slide. So when we look at different types of sourcing, I typically see companies break it into three levels. Kind of the strategic sourcing, where you're more likely to use optimization tools. That is the high value critical purchases. There's typically a longer and more in-depth selection time. Tactical sourcing, which is really prioritizing shorter lead times, things that you might not put through a sourcing process, but you can typically, in my past, we've seen data that, sourcing, you might get a strategic process, you might get, a significant double-digit percentage of savings. Tactical sourcing, you're just trying to get 3 or 4% of savings for something that you wouldn't have sourced otherwise. And that might benefit more from a sourcing optimization tool or an autonomous sourcing tool. And that can be, in many cases, completely automated, depending on the criticality and what kind of tools you want to put in place. There's also tailspend sourcing, which tends to be numerous low value transactions with a group of suppliers. Often this is the stuff that's overlooked, even though it has a lot of potential for cost savings and also potential for aggregation of volume. For these low value transactions, high volume transactions, they lend themselves really well to an autonomous sourcing tool. And that's often where you see, some of the providers on the previous page. Fair Market is one that fits really well into this automated process. And then you can move, the goal here is that you're bringing the time of your sourcing professionals onto things that are more high value, like strategic categories where, the relationship and the structuring of the SOW and the deal might have much higher value. It's also important, as we're thinking about the background here, to think about agile sourcing and how that enables really cross-functional teams working together on multiple sourcing activities in parallel. And, as we look across the organization, a lot of parts of companies have adopted agile techniques. IT, we've seen move to an agile model. We see some of the most leading sourcing teams moving in that direction as well, not necessarily taking agile as it is, but adopting some of the concepts into sourcing. So tactics that'll boost efficiency and drive more holistic decision making and accelerate your sourcing process. They find that this offers a competitive advantage when you can make a choice and upgrade whatever it is you're buying is probably bringing some value competitively, when you can reach the end goal faster, when you can be more resilient and collaborate closer with suppliers and manage your risk better and optimize your cost. That adds a lot of value to the organization beyond just cost savings. So some of the things that we see really enabling agile is collaboration with suppliers, monitoring and evaluating continuous improvement, and leveraging data and analytics. And all of these fit into this upgraded picture of how sourcing organizations really use technology to be more efficient and more effective, drive better outcomes for their stakeholders. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to Benushi next, and she's going to talk about the evolving landscape of autonomous sourcing.
Thanks, Amy. A very interesting points shared on, the agile sourcing process and how technology is also beneficial in enabling it. Now, in this section, what we want to talk about is, go in a little bit deeper into where exactly is it that you can leverage automation, right? So, what is the adoption across the strategic sourcing process? And of course, our favorite Gen AI and how it can enhance sourcing, how we are seeing the market adopting Gen AI bots, Gen AI tools to a large extent. So with that, first thing we want to do is just look at the sourcing process, right? Many of you have seen this. This is the traditional six-step process, but what we have tried to do here is give you examples of the automation use cases that your peers have been using across each of these sourcing activities. So if we look at the entire source to contract workflow, let's say you're talking about project requirement sourcing. There's a scope for you to use a sourcing bot to sort of guide the scoping process. In supplier identification and qualification, there is large amount of adoption. So there's a recommendation that you can get from automation on the best fit suppliers based on what you have fed into the model, right? So can be, let's say, an in-house procurement sort of automation system that you build. It can be through a provider that's out there in the market. Amy gave a lot of good examples of providers. And I know that maybe some of you are also using these providers or are adopting automation and sourcing. So do let us know in the Q&A if you are, because we would be very interested to know if you are also using such providers or if you are seeing such use cases being adopted in your company as well when it comes to automation, right? So going forward, if you look at like RFX preparation, RFX administration as well, tracking of bids, creating your basic RFP templates. All of these are good use cases of where you can leverage automated systems. Within supplier selection and evaluation, I would say in each of these processes, actually, there is a certain judgment intensive aspect that comes into each of these, right? So you may be able to get a first cut through automation, but there is this personnel that needs to go through that first cut and actually look at what the automated system has provided to you as data in terms of what the proposal evaluation or supplier selection it is recommending. And basis the first input that they're giving, of course, there's a lot of analysis that goes into it from a human element as well. So what we're trying to say is that it's a good combination, right? You have to think about technology as an enabler for you to sort of skip the tactical aspects of your job, and then you have to add in your own judgment intensive angle, and then there would be a time when you're actually working mostly on the strategic and judgment intensive parts, and the tactical parts would be fully automated. So that's sort of the journey that we see, the ideal journey that we see it's going to be taking, where resources and procurement will be more concentrated on strategic activities versus tactical activities. Right. So with that, I think what we want to do is now show you some data. We have done studies in the market across sourcing professionals, sourcing leaders, CPOs, category leaders, and we have gotten some good data as to how much automation adoption there is across all of these major activities that we spoke about. So the first one, 75%, RFX questionnaire preparation and RFX administration. Now, if you think about it, intuitively, this makes sense, right? Because something like RFX preparation, many a times templates can be used again and again, right? There can be little modifications that you make within the templates, depending on the solutions, of course. It's like if it's very complex solutioning, of course, there would be a personnel that is involved. But if it's smaller categories, repetitive spend that you're sourcing, or a contract renewal of sorts, then of course, automation is something that can help you with your RFX preparation aspect. Now, if you look at something like negotiations, 50% of companies said that they are adopting automation across the negotiations process, right? And even supplier proposal evaluation, award scenario recommendations, and so on. But with this particular 50%, and I'll talk about this later as well, there is a certain mix, right? So certain amounts of negotiation support can be leveraged through automation models. But when it comes to the human element, in terms of actual negotiations, there's a lot of face-to-face, or there's a lot of human intensive angle that does come in. So this is a good combination of where you would again need a combination of your human plus technology interface. And lastly, supplier identification and qualification. 25% companies have said that they look at this, and there is, though, a large opportunity for automation to take this up more and more. It's just that the data is currently at this level, but we see a large potential for supplier identification and qualification to pick up considerably when it comes to automation. And lowest is in project requirement scoping. You can imagine that, it's such a human intensive task, right? You have to sit with your business leaders. You actually have to map out what exactly are the requirements, make sure the demand is accurate. And that's when you're able to come up with a very accurate list of specs. But still, having said that, generative AI is being increasingly adopted for this particular process. All right. So with that, what we're going to do is we're going to ask you a question, right? So we're going to launch this poll, and the question is, in which sourcing activities do you anticipate automation having a significant impact? So do feel free to select as many as you like. It's a multiple choice question. But the activities are the same as what we've been talking about, right? All right, I see you in equal sort of.
I think as we have expected, RFX personal preparation is definitely leading.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm seeing some responses as well on the scoping front. So I think there is that pain point which our clients have also been telling us about, that there is a lack of collaboration with business stakeholders, and maybe they are looking at tools like autonomous sourcing to go ahead and help them to increase that collaboration. Yeah.
Definitely. It's very much aligned to the data that we and the conversations we've been having with our leaders. And I see again that negotiating and awarding business is towards the end. Only 17% of folks have said that they actually adopt automation within this process. All right. So with the results, if we just look at the results now, 71% have said questionnaire preparation is the top one, 55% at launch and invitation. And there is a certain amount of, focus that's given on supplier identification and qualification as well, which again aligns to the data. If we move to the next slide, we'll see what we have also seen across, the database. And in our results, it's been a little, I would say, been a little different than what we see in the poll, but mostly the top activities remain the top activities, right? So supplier proposal evaluation and supplier selection at 60%, 67% companies have selected this. RFX is a close second. And if you look at negotiation support, again, it's towards the lower end, right? Which is, I mean, in the poll, we had around 17% only, but over here we have a little bit more, with 40% enterprises saying that, yes, they do use automation for negotiation support as well. So what exactly are the reasons for this, right? What exactly do we feel, why is this happening? Why is this happening across companies? The reason again is because when you look at something like, identifying award scenarios, which is talking about selecting after a proposal evaluation as to which company should be awarded business, there is a lot of optimal decision making that needs to go around that. You have to create scenarios manually, you have to make sure you analyze it, and you have to really think about what the results will be based on your previous, let's say, long-term relationships as well. So a lot of, all these tacit elements also come into play when it comes to making such decisions. It's not just about a weighted scoring model that we go ahead with. There's a lot of actual visibility that we need on what the solution offers. So with these type of processes, of course, there is only few use cases that can be adopted when it comes to automation. Whereas the others, there's a lot of potential. All right. So with that, what we want to show you is, so Amy spoke about, strategic sourcing, tactical sourcing, and tail spend management. And what we want to show you now is what spend activities we have seen having maximum automation potential, whether it be through providers or whether it be through, in-house solutions that you have built within yourself. So if we move to the next slide, what we will see is that tail spend sourcing it has the highest automation adoption, right? So organizations that are very actively managing tail spend, it's the lowest, volume of spend, but it's also having like huge transaction volumes, right? So this is something that is easy to automate, and it's easy to increase efficiency by automating this particular process. So that is the largest one, and it's very closely followed by tactical sourcing, all your three bids and a buy. So a lot of companies we are also speaking to are using automation in their tactical sourcing processes. There's a lot of self-service sourcing that is happening within it, and sometimes what we see is that there's a combination of e-auctions plus automation that is combined within one particular tool. There are very interesting tools in the market that are out there which are offering very unique solutions. So when it comes to something like tail spend management or tactical sourcing, we've spoken to so many interesting providers who are using economic theories like game theories, prisoner's dilemma, and all of those good concepts that we have studied within economics or management if we ever went to business school. And they're actually being used in practicality when it comes to automating these particular processes. So yeah, I think with that, what we want to do is now take you through generative AI as well, because there's a lot of potential that bots have also been adding into the system when it comes to running sourcing events.
Thank you, Bharati. As we have discussed so far, that there are various technology providers in the market who are providing services, who are providing tools for autonomous sourcing optimization, or your basically sourcing tools. So what we have seen in the autonomous sourcing tools landscape is that there are a few tech providers who are leveraging generative AI to create sourcing bots, which one can use for not just scoping the project requirements, but you can consider the whole sourcing workflow and use it as a guide to go throughout it. Like, let's say, for example, you are trying to create a RFX, whether it be RFP or RFI or RFQ, then what these sourcing bots do is that they help you understand what has been the historical data regarding that particular category, and how can you better create that RFP so that you are able to get better responses from your prospective suppliers or your existing suppliers. Now, how does it do that? Is that it leverages large language models. So we have seen that a few tech providers are creating their own large language models, but there are also a few tech providers who are relying on the proprietary models out there. Like, let's say they are using OpenAI or Gemini. So these are the kind of things that we are seeing when it comes to sourcing bots and generative AI in this autonomous sourcing tech landscape. And what essentially these sourcing bots, why we are saying that sourcing bots should be a part of the tools that you are looking for is that they essentially are able to reduce the amount of time and effort that you're putting into all these activities, right? Like, let's say if you are also looking for negotiation support from these tools, then what essentially the sourcing bot provides is that you can create a simulated environment where the tool plays the role of your supplier, and then you can have the round of negotiation and see what can be the best optimal strategy that you can go ahead with when you go into the main negotiations. But even if you're looking for negotiations through the tool, then the support that these bots provide is that they they track the kind of prices that are being put by the suppliers throughout the bidding process. Like, let's say in the round 2, you are seeing that a particular supplier is drastically reducing the amount of price that they have quoted. So the tool will notice it, and then in the future instances, it will share across these insights and mention that, okay, these are the few suppliers that have this kind of behavior when you are going through multiple rounds of bidding, and hence you might want to go ahead and do that instead of doing just one round of bidding. So these are the kind of things where sourcing bots can be useful. And also what we have seen is not just for project requirement scoping, but also if you are looking at activities like evaluating the responses in the proposal and also in the bid sheet, then what these sourcing bots can do is slice and dice the data for you so that you are able to get a more holistic picture of what the supplier is providing, so that then you can go ahead and create those negotiation levers and then go into the actual discussion and try to get best offer from your suppliers. And while we are talking from a buyer perspective, but what these tools are also doing is they are cognizant of the fact that suppliers are also very much important in this whole process, right? When you are looking at adopting any kind of procurement technology, then a major roadblock has always been that the adoption is on the lower end because maybe it is sometimes clunky or sometimes it is not intuitive enough for both the buyers and the suppliers. So what these tools are trying to do is they are also creating a very good UI and navigable platform for the suppliers as well. So when the RFP or RFI goes to the supplier, then the kind of portal that they have, easier access to it, as an easier login access, then able to provide insights. The generative AI also provides insight to the suppliers. The insights can be on the grounds of what would be a competitive price that you can put into your proposal when you are going into these discussions, so that you are not doing too much to and fro, and that also saves you a lot of time. So yeah, not just on the buyer front, but also on the supplier front, we are seeing that these tools are creating some sort of impact, which is going a long way in helping you increase the efficiency and also be on the forefront of creating good relationships with the suppliers right from the word go. We in the next slide, what we will see is what kind of benefits sourcing professionals are seeing regarding the uses of generative AI, and also some challenges which we will discuss. So we did another survey with the sourcing audience, as Banushi had mentioned before. It included CPOs, category heads, sourcing managers, etc. And what we wanted to understand from this survey was how the outlook for generative AI is amongst the sourcing professionals, right? Now, major thing which came out of this is that they want generative AI to help them to increase their efficiency and save their time, which is what most of the autonomous sourcing tools out there in the market trying to do, by taking off your hands the tactical sourcing or tail spend sourcing, so that you can focus on more strategic activities throughout the whole sourcing workflow. So that was one of the major benefits which the respondents mentioned, and followed by there was also a mention of accuracy improvement and also better risk management, which generative AI can help with. Now, this is actually not just restricted to sourcing events which are run by procurement, but also sourcing events which will be assisted by procurement, right? Because most of the times you see that business stakeholders are also allowed in organizations to scope and source the project, but then procurement just imposes those guardrails so that rules and regulations are being taken into consideration, and they just come into the picture when negotiations are being done, right? So for both of these type of sourcing events, generative AI can definitely be helpful. In the case that if you are looking at assisted procurement, then it can take the business stakeholder throughout the whole sourcing workflow so that they are not lost, right, during these activities, and they don't drop off at any point of the whole sourcing workflow, and hence it helps you to increase the adoption of your tool. So what we have seen historically, a problem with e-sourcing tools is that the adoption is low because the business stakeholders are not able to navigate properly through them. But these sourcing bots, they act as a guide for the business stakeholders and handhold them throughout the whole process by, let's say, if you are at the stage of proposing, evaluating the proposals, then the tool will mention what are the best practices to do that. And it will also show you what other I mean, what your other peers are doing, so that they are getting best output of that out of that sourcing event. So these are the kind of things where generative AI can be useful. And next, what we will see is what are the challenges that uh, most of us are expecting with generative AI's usage, right? I mean, first things first, what procurement has again struggled with is the data silos problem, right? Most of the times the data is not sitting with procurement, or it is in different tools spread across maybe your ERP system, maybe some CLM system. Then how do you make sense of the data? So that is the first step if you want to make the best use of any generative AI enabled tool. So you need to focus on that, create practices around having good quality of data so that you can input that high quality data into these systems and then get optimum results out of it. So first things first, that is the challenge which most of the sourcing professionals pointed out regarding use of generative AI. And secondly, it is about also some kind of fear that they have about what if the response, what if the generative AI tool is hallucinating when it is giving out those responses, or what if there is some sort of bias in its recommendations, right? So when we spoke with these technology providers in the autonomous sourcing tech landscape, we also asked these pinpointed questions around the biases which the AI model can bring into the tool, or if it is hallucinating or not. So what they are essentially doing here is they have put strict measures when they are training their models. And what they are also ensuring is that they are not training the model on any of the client data, because that is also one of the major concerns, right? Regarding your data privacy. And what if the proprietary tool which is being used, like let's say OpenAI, is being leveraged by that tech tool and by that tool, and then all of your data goes to them. So these are the kind of challenges which sourcing professionals pointed out. But that is what these new age technology providers are working on. So they are not allowing any kind of data to be retained with them when it comes to the client data. They are just using it to give you responses, but they are not training their AI models on it. So that one of those major fears is gone out, right? And regarding hallucinations, given that they are training their models only on sourcing data, as in various terminologies, various categories that are a part of procurement, whether it be indirect or direct procurement, and how to go about bid analytics, etc. Given that the information source is very much small, hence the hallucination part is also eliminated from this. So that fear which most people have regarding generative AI, at least in the case of procurement technology, is sorted for now. Lastly, one other major challenge which they have is the lack of understanding or the awareness that is about generative AI. So I guess that is where research firms like us also come into picture, where we do these webinars and have interactions with our clients around generative AI and its usage in procurement or sourcing, and hence that will help alleviate those fears in the minds of both procurement stakeholders and business stakeholders.
Yeah, great point, Amit. And I think so. The first challenge that you mentioned, right? 65% companies are facing this challenge, or at least feel that there is a challenge in integrating with existing systems and processes. And there is a question also in our chat that has come exactly on the same point, right?
Yeah.
So we would just, I mean, we've been talking to so many service providers, like Amit mentioned. We have been hearing from them that they can integrate with your best of breed tools. They can integrate with your existing S2P tools. They can also integrate with your existing ERPs, right? So this is sort of, they have to integrate with your existing solutions, right? That's their business. They have to do it. So they are doing it pretty well, we would say.
Yeah. True, Manushree. So that is a good point, actually. So when we were having a discussion with one of the technology providers, they specifically pointed out that they are making that transition from their sourcing tool to any P2P or contact lifecycle management tool that you might be using. So they are trying to make the transition very smooth. And also regarding the intake of requests, let's say you already have an existing source to pay suite, and then you are using any of these autonomous sourcing best of breed tools, then they are making that easy as well, so that you can easily take those requests from that source to pay suite and then go ahead and start identifying the needs, create your RFP and do your evaluation, and then move smoothly towards the P2P or contract lifecycle management tool that you might already have. So yeah, those are the kind of measures which these technology providers are also taking into consideration. Yeah. I guess we can move to the next slide to discuss about the offering that we have. So we will take a brief pause to discuss a bit about this. So what we are offering to the enterprises who are participating in this webinar today is that we are giving you a complimentary briefing on how technology can be leveraged for sourcing excellence. And by that, we not just mean about autonomous sourcing, but we can also discuss about sourcing optimization tools, e-sourcing tools, or how to get started with the whole journey of digitization if that is where you are in the sourcing maturity. So these are the kind of things which we will discuss in this complimentary briefing. The link to which you will find in the chat, you can go to that link and express your interest to request for this complimentary call, and then our experts can guide you through this whole, to understand the whole tech landscape regarding sourcing. Yeah. Okay. I guess we can move ahead and then deep dive into the next section, which is about how can you navigate selection of autonomous sourcing tools. So while we discussed about what we saw in our survey regarding the challenges associated with generative AI or benefits that it can bring, along with what is the current adoption of autonomous sourcing tools. And now what we will essentially discuss is what is the reason that there is a demand for autonomous sourcing tools. And we will also see how you can assess the autonomous sourcing tools which are available in the market. And also we will talk a bit more about the challenges that you can face when adopting these autonomous sourcing tools. So we can first go ahead and discuss the drivers of adoption. So yeah, first things first, regarding autonomous sourcing tools, as we have mentioned, what they do is take off tasks off your hand and then increase your productivity and also efficiency. So essentially, these tools can be used to reduce any kind of manual effort and by automating the repetitive tasks so that you can go ahead and then focus on more strategic activities, right? Secondly, what we see that what another driver that we see for adoption of autonomous sourcing tool is that they can improve the compliance of regarding any kinds of rules or regulations that you might have in your organization. Like, let's say you have certain rules regarding diverse providers or sustainable providers for some categories, right? That is where these tools can impose these rules so that whether it be a procurement run sourcing event or procurement assisted sourcing event, in both the instances, it is made sure that they are complying by those rules, and so that you are able to then go ahead and meet with all the business objectives or goals that have been set by your organizations. Because lately what we have been seeing is procurement is not just another function which is focusing on cost optimization, right? Procurement is also taking a step towards helping you increase your diverse spend or also comply with the ESG goals that your organization has set. So this is where these new age tools come into picture. They help you solve these problems and increase the compliance regarding all the rules and regulations. Also, one other thing where all these autonomous sourcing tools can help is they can increase the transparency. By that, we mean that in amongst your internal stakeholders, what often happens is there might be some similar sourcing event going on with another set of suppliers who are also similar offering similar things, but then given that there is not enough visibility, so that you often lose out on getting better offers from the suppliers. So what these autonomous sourcing tools are doing is that they can bundle your requests, bundle your similar requests, so that you are able to run those sourcing events in an efficient manner and get best savings or also best payment terms, etc., from those sourcing events. And also one other thing where it can be helpful is that it can automate your workflows and also suggest who would be in charge of any particular thing. Like, let's say if there is if you are creating a particular workflow in the sourcing process and you want to assign certain tasks regarding evaluating the proposals to some business stakeholders, then these autonomous sourcing tools are able to simplify that process so that you are able to easily invite those business stakeholders and help them do an apples to apples comparison of all the proposals and bids that have come into from the suppliers, and then go ahead and create those awarding scenarios which are optimal for your category or your organization. Next, what we will do is we will move a bit further and talk about what are the assessment parameters which need to be taken into consideration while choosing these autonomous sourcing tools. So as you can see, we have pointed out 4 major things here, whether it be about what is the scope of automation of these tools, from the needs identification stage to the contracting stage, and how easily they are able to integrate with your CLM systems or your S2P systems. Also, another thing is around dashboards, how elaborate dashboards they are able to bring forth for your leadership team so that you are having a holistic view of all the sourcing events going on, and then drive better savings from it. And the last point is about user experience and how customizable the tool is, right? Now, what essentially we have seen when speaking with technology providers is that, let's say they are talking about a particular activity, which is supplier identification and qualification, then they have these vast supplier networks on their tool itself, which you can leverage along with the set of suppliers that you already have, so that you're not just focusing on your existing supplier base, right? So these autonomous sourcing tools, they are able to go through that supplier database and help you identify, okay, along with your preferred suppliers, these are other set of suppliers who can give you same product or services, but at better payment terms or at better savings. So they are able to help you identify that. And along with these recommendations, they are also able to customize it according to the category, right? So if you are talking about a complex category, like let's say logistics, and you are having your bid sheets which you have prepared and sent it out to the suppliers. Now, what these autonomous sourcing tools can do is, firstly, they can help you create those bid sheets, and secondly, they can enhance your bid analytics by suggesting what is the best way to slice and dice that data, and then go ahead and get those insights from the tool itself. As I mentioned before, multiple tools in this space have already embedded generative AI based sourcing bots, which can be useful for these processes. So these are the few things that you need to take into consideration while assessing autonomous sourcing tools. But I mean, as I mentioned before as well, integration is one major aspect of going ahead and choosing these tools, but also if they have an intuitive platform, because some of the times your business stakeholders will be the ones who might be scoping the requirements or doing the sourcing. So for them, if the tool is able to guide them throughout the whole process, and not just help them identify the like not just recommend who are the best suppliers, but also help them provide insights on what is the better way to go about any sourcing event, then that would be an added advantage. Yeah, so now that we have discussed a bit about the various assessment parameters, we would move ahead and want to discuss a bit about the challenges that are associated with adoption of these tools. So handing it over to Bhanushri.
All right, so we're back to again engaging the audience. Right, so we want to ask you a question by launching this poll. So what do you think are the major challenges associated with using autonomous sourcing tools, in case you have tried it, in case you have done a small pilot, maybe across few use cases? Okay, I see a lot of people have already started saying data security issues, biased recommendations. But oh my God, 85% are saying data security issues. All right. So think that is a major concern. I wonder if it, varies across industries. We have some hypothesis that maybe the more regulated industries do worry more about data security issues as compared to some of the less regulated industries. but it's interesting to see these results.
And it is also followed by lack of adaptability to unique situations. And this is what we have also observed, right, Manushi? When we're speaking with these technology providers, maybe they are specializing in one or two categories and that is their focus area. Like, let's say if someone is focused on MRO category and they have good capabilities around that, but when it comes to maybe something like marketing services or professional services categories, they are not able to uh, not able to bring that kind of specialization to those categories as well. But I think it is just a matter of time before they are able to pivot to these categories as well and draw those parallels from the categories which they're already specializing.
Agreed. In fact, I think one of the questions that we just answered was on the same point that you mentioned, that is this an industry or category agnostic process, when it comes to
Yeah,
automation adoption? And I would still say it is not really, to a large extent, not that,
yeah,
dependent, because we have seen very regulated industries also doing good amount of automation adoption. So it just
yeah.
depends on your maturity as a procurement organization, and the maybe if it's related to category, then what is the spend in it, what are the complexities that you're facing, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. I think when we were speaking to one of the technology providers, they mentioned their client who was a e-commerce giant. They have completely automated their self-service sourcing, right? So, I mean, we are also seeing these enterprises, large enterprises who are looking towards completely automating their processes. And we have also seen in some instances that the negotiation process is automated, where the bot to bot or also the bot to human negotiations are completely done by the tool. So yeah, I mean, once we start seeing these kind of results out there, maybe when these enterprises see that their peers are also adopting it, they would be more, I mean, agreeable to start using these tools and see for themselves what the results are, what the results these tools are providing.
100%, yeah. So I think with that, we want to wrap up today's conversation on this. If we, just summarize the challenges, and if we move to the next slide, what we'll see is that it's sort of a summary of where we have seen companies facing challenges. You have given us very good information on how data security should be really highlighted in this particular aspect. So data security, ethical concerns, lack of adaptability. There's a certain amount of ambiguity around ROI that I would just like to point out here on this slide, because I think, again, someone in the chat asked this question about, whether there is a lot of effort involved in model tuning, or do sourcing teams need to invest a lot of money and time into actually training it? And my answer is yes. That is, in fact, the second highest cost, especially if you're automating the entire sourcing life cycle. So that is one reason why the ROI is not very much captured across sourcing and procurement as a department, right? We're still seeing a large amount of adoption across a lot of use cases, a lot of pilots moving into production, and those type of activities. But then these costs really sometimes add up. So you have to see where you're getting the good amount of tangible outcomes as well. It's not just about intangible outcomes that probably you'll see in the long term and they will have a good impact, but what is it that you're getting? How do you measure it? These are great questions we're getting from people. All right. So Amy, what would you like to, bring up the exciting event that we're going to have?
Yes, for sure. So we're just getting to the point of wrapping up. And one thing that we wanted to highlight and let the audience know about before we get to Q&A is our inaugural Everest Group Engage event. This is a in-person event, a conference geared towards sourcing, vendor management leaders, global business services leaders as well, whether you have sourcing in your GBS or not, as well as other shared service type functions. Really excited about this. We've been working quite a bit to plan this event for several months now, released a preliminary agenda. So if you go to the link here, events at Everest Group, and I'm sure we'll see that link in the chat as well, you'll get these slides with it. You can start to see some of the topics that we'll cover, and Really looking forward to this. We're going to be talking about strategic services, managing providers, managing vendors, sourcing strategies, negotiation, things like that, especially in complex service categories, which tends to be the categories that Everest Group analysts cover in the most depth. Looking forward to this, and it will be September 30th to October 2nd in Dallas. So hopefully central for those of you in the US at least to get to. Expect more global events in years to come. So if you have any questions about that or just want to get some information, please follow that link. And next, I think we can talk about some of the questions that are here. And I think you guys have done a really good job of answering these as we've gone through. I'd love to hear from both of you your thoughts. I think this question around Frankenstein bid and award evaluations with automation, and I'll just read it here. James asked, how do you avoid Frankenstein bids award evaluations with automation? For example, automation may pick up best of breed from different suppliers for individual components of a bid, but when you put them together, you do not get a real end-to-end solution award. Certainly one of those examples of humans having a little bit more logic for putting the pieces of a puzzle together than bots, right? But as you were speaking with, I know you spoke with many providers before today's session. Has that come up, and what do you suggest people do to avoid that challenge?
Yeah, so I think one of the technology providers mentioned that they are providing an insight into what is the coverage of the bids which these suppliers are providing. Like, let's say a particular supplier is giving 60% coverage, or some provider is giving 70% coverage. Then you can go ahead and ask for those insights and put those rules into the system itself. So what these autonomous sourcing tools essentially provide is you need not just go about with the existing rules that they have applied. You can customize those rules according to your organization's rules and regulations, so that, let's say, if your focus is to avoid any kind of such Frankenstein bids, then just get those rules in place so that you are focusing on not just the coverage of bids, but also on the on the offerings of these suppliers, so that they are holistic and not bits and pieces.
Right. Vanishi, anything to add to that?
I think Amit covered it very well. We've been talking to a lot of providers, and such examples keep coming up of different type of issues that providers are facing, and there are always like good solutions that companies have figured out to it, right? So
yeah, for sure. I do see a number of questions about, can we provide a list of tools, or can we share the tools? And we gave a couple examples up front, but we weren't really thorough here. I know that you're both working on a report that will go into more depth, a market report on the providers. It's a little preliminary to share the results of that, but do you want to comment at all on what you're looking at and when that will be ready, how people can access it?
Yeah, so we have assessed multiple providers in this space, and the market report is currently under works, which might go out at the end of May this year. So what essentially that market report will provide insights into is we will have provider profiles of all these tech providers that we have assessed. And along with that, we will also mention best practices about going ahead and choosing the autonomous sourcing tools on the basis of the discussions that we have had with our clients, so that those may be your peers, and you will get an insight into what categories these autonomous sourcing tools work best for, or where should you go ahead and use sourcing optimization tools. So these are the kind of insights that you will be able to get from this market.
Great. Thank you for highlighting that, because that answers a few people's different tool questions. Again, we can name some logos of who we're talking to, and they did come up in some of the questions, but we don't really want to start going too deep because those providers are giving a lot of briefings and insights to us right now. But certainly fill out the form link to set up time to talk, and that's something we can share in more detail, and also maybe share a preliminary version of that report when it gets closer, or do a briefing of it. I think there's a couple more questions just coming in, so I wanted to ask a couple of the newer ones. Cost models for the AI sourcing companies or the tools, is it percent of spend? Is it a license model? Have we looked at that yet? Anything you can, and I know caveat that with they're all different, right? But
Yeah,
what seems to be
yeah.
most common as we add these? A lot of this is layering in or bringing it in an existing tool.
As you mentioned, Amy, everyone has their different go-to-market strategy, right? Some of them are going with a more outcome-based pricing model where they are first helping the organizations to test the product for, let's say, 6 or 8 months. And then on the basis of the savings that they're able to generate from the usage of these tools, they are going ahead and pricing it. But for a majority of the tech providers, the commercial model which we are seeing is that they are taking an upfront fee, which is a platform fee. And on the basis of that, and on top of that, they are including on the number of users which will be using the tool. But we are not seeing that the number of licenses which are being distributed. It is more about the amount of sourcing events that are happening on the tool, or the amount of spend that is flowing through it. So those are a few of the commercial models which we are seeing. I guess Bhanushi can add more.
I would just, I think, add that it's very, like, as you look at these commercial models, it becomes more and more important for you to link it to the outcomes that you're also obtaining, right? I think someone in the chat had asked the question, are teams able to obtain 30 to 50% headcount reduction because of the use of these tools? And at this point, it is so early to say that, right? It is just an investment you're making. There's so many outcomes that will come in the long term. That you just can't get very quickly. It's not a very quick return unless it's a small use case that you are implementing it for. In that case, of course, there will be quicker returns. So very important to link your ROI with the actual commercial models that you're offering. And one point you mentioned, Amit, was on spend influence, right? So this amount of spend being influenced, maybe if that is being increased, that is one great outcome that procurement also wants to gain in their procurement scorecard. So with that, I think we would, probably wrap up the session also. We're almost at time. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Good timing. Thank you everyone for the questions. We got a lot of questions. Thank you, Bhanushi and Amit, because I know that you've been working a lot to understand and learn about this category as it's evolving and stay on top of that. And I look forward to the report in another end of next month. So we're getting close to that. Please, everyone, go ahead and click that link for the complimentary briefing. We'd love to talk to you one-on-one, and we can probably dig into some of these very specific questions and get you some updated reports as well. And then if you're interested in our Everest group Engage, we welcome you to keep an eye on that. Click that link. You can start to get tickets to that now, or at least stay up to date on the agenda as we continue to evolve that. So thank you everyone for joining today, and have a great